back to this City Ramble, where if you're watching on the YouTube stream, you are no doubt laughing your head off right now because it is quite literally the Spider-Man meme for the benefit of the tape. All three contributors wearing last season's away shirt, the Gillingham-inspired 99 playoff one, and to make it even better, I've got two Joes with me, so it is very much like looking in a mirror here. Joe Ricci and Joe Olivier. Joe Ricci, how are we doing?
Good. As much as I love you as a host, I think if like Joe Butterfield was hosting this podcast with that kid on, it would just be chef's kiss. But
that's like the City Ramble Infinity Stone. It's never happened, and it probably never will. But who knows? Who knows?
I'm very good. Great weekend and 3 points for City, so no complaints on my end. How are you?
I'm good. Do you know what? No one ever asked the hosts how they are, so I will. I like that. Well done. You the Battle of the Joes. Ricci goes 1-0 up. Joe Olivier, you can take a step forward with a moment of the weekend. Obviously, this part of the week we like to kick it off. Can be City related, could be non-football related, can be anything. What have you got?
Well, I just want to say as well, not only is it the Spider-Man meme because, we're both called Joe, we've both got the same shirt on, but we're both pretty much the same height anyway, so, it's quite literally like looking in a mirror as well. But my moment of the weekend...
There's one that I can't get involved in. Sorry, guys.
Yeah, you nicked it off from both of us. But my moment of the weekend is, I'm pretty sure I know what one of you guys is, so I'm not going to say it. So mine is that it's Pep's fastest... he's the fastest to reach 250 wins, quicker than any other manager, and especially Fergie, and that pleases me very, very much.
I like that. Was it 52 games quicker, something like that?
Yeah.
It was quite a few, wasn't it?
Yeah, which is just even more suggesting that, he is the greatest manager of all time, the greatest manager to grace the Premier League, not that Manchester United manager who shall not be named, although I've already named him, but less said about him the better, I suppose.
You can have one mention, and is that's it. Ricci, moment of the weekend.
I can promise you that you guys won't share my moment of the weekend. It is very random. So I was at the grocery store Sunday morning, and the cashier who was checking me out saw that I was wearing said 99 inspired City kit. And she's like, "Oh, City fan," and didn't seem happy. I'm like, "Yeah." Well, turns out she's a United fan, but more than that, I hear her with an Irish accent. Her nephew is Alan Brown of Middlesbrough on loan from Sunderland. Just kind of like a middle of the road player, but why she's working at the grocery store in New Hampshire, I have no idea. But had a lovely conversation.
It's very random. I was gonna make a joke that I had actually the same one as you, just out of coincidence. I thought it was gonna be I don't know. Whatever, but no, I don't think anyone can blag that they'd had the same one as you there. Joe Olivier, what did you think mine would be?
I thought it'd be something to do with Grealish scoring a 93rd minute winner, and
not quite. No,
really?
No.
Well, because that was going to be mine, but
yeah, it is an ex-City player. It is ex-City player related, and it's to do with Napoli, where I believe, not that I've seen the full game, but I've seen Kevin De Bruyne come off the bench, and I've been told reliably turn the game around. But it's Rasmus Haaland, actually, my moment of the weekend. Yet again, scoring a goal. He got the winner for Napoli against Genoa. So that's 3 goals in 2 games for him over the last week. And it's always nice seeing players flourish away from Manchester United, and there's been plenty of them lately. Guys, we'll get into the City match then, because I'm going to go out there and on a limb and say, Ricci, massive, massive win for Manchester City.
Yeah, it was the classic stereotypical, just get the 3 points, don't worry about the rest. International break in front of us now. There's a 2-week period of no City and obviously some dropped points around City in the table. Brentford away, a side that have been very good at home this year. I believe this is their first loss at home. So, it's one of those where I don't really care about it being 3-4-0. I just want people to play good enough and get the 3 points. And ultimately that's what they did. There's obviously going to be some talking points that maybe aren't as positive, but to walk away, 3 points off the top of the table, only 7 games in, obviously still a lot of football to play, but yeah, this was a massive win. And when you look at City's fixtures ahead, I'd say all are more favorable than not for the next 5 or 6. So, if this is something that can kickstart them, provided the players stay fit on international duty, I think this could be the start of a really good run for the club.
Yeah, no stupid injuries or no silly injuries, something like that. Haaland described it as post-match. Joe Olivia, I'm interested in where you sort of fall on the what was heading into the game. A little bit of a debate form in terms of what's more important, performance versus result. In the end, we kind of got a bit of both, which we'll dissect and we'll dig into. But were you? I know obviously we did the review after the Monaco game, but were you sort of thinking like if it's a bit similar, City play well, but ultimately they might not get that, that second goal over the line or whatever it will be, maybe they concede late and Brentford draw, whatever, would that have been represented to you a monumental disaster because of where Brentford have been? I know Joe Ricci says that first home defeat, and they took a few scalps. Obviously, beat United, drew with Chelsea. But would that have been really bad for you had City gone there, regardless of what actually happened? If they'd have gone there and not won,
I think that. Yeah, I mean, I know Brentford is a better team than most people have the idea about this season. But I think, considering where they are on the table at the minute and sort of your expectation for City anyway is to go away from home and to usually win anyway, at least, it's the top 6, sort of top 8, maybe, where you go, this is where they're going to struggle. It's a game you might say, City might go there and draw, but for a team like Brentford in their position, you expect to win. And I think I'm kind of on the view of that it depends on the game in context, kind of whether I prefer performance over a result or whether I prefer result. Because like the Monaco game, for example, that I'm much more happy to see that we played really well and we just didn't get the result, because I'm like, look, you only have to finish in the top 8. It's not that big a deal if you drop points. If you didn't lose at the end of the day, we only drew. Whereas this is, in the league, it's a bit different, where as long as we get the 3 points and we play relatively good enough, I'm quite comfortable with that. I'm quite happy with that. And, I've seen, again, a lot of people, City fans just love to moan. They just love to have a little anything to gripe about, because yes, it wasn't, vintage City. Yes, it wasn't a perfect performance and everyone played their part brilliantly. But we didn't necessarily play bad either. I thought the first half, we were really, really good. I loved that first half. The second half was the new-ish kind of City we've been seeing, like sort of against Arsenal, where they're scrappy, they're your regimental defensive performance. You just sit back, you soak up, you try and get a second, of course, but there's much more that focus on just being defensively sound instead, even if Donnarumma decides to kick it against the pressing player in like the last minute, but whatever. And I thought, even in that side of things, I thought we still played relatively well in terms of sort of being defensively sound. So we kept a clean sheet in the end. So I think that, again, people just love a little moan. They'd love to just pick apart City at any point. And it's like, we got 3 points on the road against a side that, like you say, has had some pretty good results at home this season. And I think that if you just said, we've clearly had our struggles against them as well. I mean, Haaland's the first player other than Foden to even score a goal against them at their ground. Even last year, obviously, we were 2-0 up and we drew 2-2 in the end. We showed sort of a great bit of resilience and a bit of grit to actually not fall at the hurdle that we've fallen at so many times just over last season and even this year, like sort of conceding the last minute goals against Monaco, against Arsenal. To be so defensively sound and actually see the game out I would say, was very impressive from City, and I don't think it warranted people picking apart the performance and saying, oh, well, we only scored one and it was Haaland again who scored and we weren't clinical enough, etc., etc. On another day, Kelleher doesn't make the save from Reinders, Foden's a bit more clinical, and it's another game where you go, oh, wow, that was really comfortable for City. Instead, it wasn't. It was a bit tetchy towards the end, but like Ricci says, 3 points is 3 points. It's a game where you probably would have wanted it to be a bit more comfortable. In the end, it wasn't. We've got them 3 points now. Move on to Everton. Touch wood, Rodri doesn't sound as bad as it first looked.
Yeah.
So you can maybe, hopefully, say we come out of the game unscathed. And at that point, it's, I can't really complain too much about a victory.
Yeah. You're right. It was totally a game of two halves, wasn't it, Ricci? And I think that for me, that first half, which we'll begin with, it's impossible to say it was flawless, because ultimately City only went in at the break 1-0 up, and a flawless half would be 3 goals up, having created a bucket load of chances. But I think apart from putting the ball in the back of the net, which yes, of course, is the hardest thing to do, but apart from doing that, the intensity that City played at, I thought was fascinating and also really impressive. I thought the midfield was working exceptionally well. Excuse me. both when Rodri was on the pitch and when Nico Gonzalez came on the pitch, I thought Erling Haaland was putting himself about really well. Maybe could have wanted a little bit more from the wingers, specifically Savinho. I thought Oscar Bob was getting into the game and was looking dangerous whenever he got on the ball. The both of the fullbacks, again, pushing really high. And Gary Neville on the commentary for the UK guys was saying, like, he thought it was a really dominant half of City. He was praising City, but at the same time, he was kind of putting it down to Brentford's sort of, lack of this, that, the other. I don't know necessarily how much more they could have done. Obviously, in the second half, they do come out a little bit more, but I think part of that is City fatigue and City, naturally losing control. This isn't a treble-winning City team. Not yet, anyway. So they're still sort of working their way through. But just on that first half, Richie, I mean, some of the football played in there was incredible. Like, genuinely, the first time in a long time that I've gone, wow, this is not just good football, this is elite, high level football. Sort of, dare I say it, in that first half, league-winning sort of performance.
Yeah, I'm probably like a tier below your thinking in terms of hype. I think it was like 2/3 City's ability and execution, 1/3 Brentford willing to sit back and kind of let them have possession and feel the game out, which I think for what they're trying to do makes sense. But ultimately, City had the ball. I think on another day, City probably going to half with 2 goals, maybe 3. It wasn't. I'm trying to not sound like one of those fans that Joe referred to earlier, but it wasn't vintage City, because I think we're still seeing the signs of, like, if it's not Haaland, then who? I mean, no one else really, bar that pass from Bob into Foden. There wasn't really big chances. I know the Reinders volley, but again, you're kind of plucking here. It didn't feel like there was any clear-cut chances for anyone other than Erling Haaland, and you could say that, okay, well, that's fine because he's putting his chances away, but at the same time, I'm on the other side of the coin of what happens when Haaland's not on it that day, or, God forbid Haaland's not fit, whatever it may be. So I went into halftime.
Is the counter to that not the fact that everything City do is sort of centered around getting the ball to the striker, who everything he touches basically turns to gold? Like, I'm sure if Haaland was the issue is if Haaland doesn't take those chances, I totally accept that. I think if Haaland isn't there, we see City set up in a totally different way with the way that their attack and the midfield is sort of centered around that.
And if they do, they look stronger in certain ways. I still question where the goals come from, just based on the last 15
going
months
back
or
to
so.
sort of 2022 in that case, then, isn't it?
Yeah.
So
yeah.
It is a double-edged sword. I know what you mean.
Right. But I mean, ultimately, I going into halftime, I thought it was a very good half. I wouldn't say it was brilliant vintage City, but again, I thought, given the circumstances coming off a draw midweek, as we said, Brentford a tough side at home, I think you have to be happy at halftime. I think for me it was, what was going to be the message from Pep at half? Was it, more of the same? Was it, hey, Brentford are probably going to step it up a bit here. We're going to need to match their energy. And obviously we'll get to the second half, but that's kind of where my head went of like, where do we go from here? It's a great first half, but there's still 45 minutes plus, and there's, Brentford are a tier below talent-wise, but I think they still have that coaching ability behind them to make something out of nothing. So I was a little hesitant at halftime in that sense, but at the end of the day, I think it was like an 8 out of 10 half.
No, I do agree. I think my own halftime tweet was somewhat along the lines of what I've just said in terms of City playing really well, but the test is, can they go into the second half and replicate it? In the end, they didn't, but we'll get to it. I think there's positives, a different sort of positives to take from it. Joe Olivier, that goal, Erling Haaland, obviously, like I said, everything he's touching is turning to goals at the moment. But it's again come from a long ball. Gvardiol again, actually. So those two seem to have a really nice link up. And it's kind of what everyone, probably including Erling Haaland, has been saying to Pep for the last, 18 months, 2 years. If there's space in behind, let that monster just unleash him, basically. And I wouldn't have been surprised if Haaland has knocked on Guardiola's door at one point and said, look, I appreciate the tiki-taka stuff, and I hate that phrase. It's such wishy-washy. It doesn't really exist anymore. But you get what I'm, 1,000,000 passes, get a goal, whatever, try and walk into the back of the net. I wouldn't be surprised if Haaland's gone, look, just send that ball in behind and I'll do the rest. And certainly over the last week or so, he has done.
Yeah, I mean, even like even today, there was a couple of times where Foden could have played the ball over the top or could have played it in behind. You could see him sort of was very frustrated that Foden didn't play that pass, or whoever it was didn't play that
Mm.
pass. But I think that yeah, we're clearly more tuned in to that sort of style of football as seen against Monaco. But yeah, and Guardiola again, such a great ball playing defender. I love the fact that he's sort of at the heart and centre of it, because obviously we saw so much of him at left back last season and the season before that. But I think that that's clearly where his strongest position is, and if we can get him on the ball more, it's another one of his strong suits that we ought to involve him with more. Because at left back you didn't see too much of that. He was more just sort of an attacking fullback rather than like with the ball at his feet. Sort of we saw it on the attacking end, but we didn't see that in sort of the build up aspect of things. So I'm kind of really grateful that he's at the heart and centre of the sort of 2 goals in the last 4 or 5 days for City. But Haaland, I think as well, is the kind of Haaland that you would expect, that everyone expected him to be like when we first signed him, like this big, muscly striker who can really put his weight about and shove defenders around and no one can match his strength kind of thing. And we do see that sometimes, but it's not. You see more of just the fact that he's just so clinical. Whereas today it was, he puts this, not only did he a great finish, puts the chance away at the near post, but the fact that he basically manhandles a grown lad, a Set Van der Berg, he just abuses him. It almost feels wrong to watch. That's what the goal feels like. It feels wrong to watch what he's doing to him. He just absolutely manhandles him and pushes him out the way like he's not even there. And he just like that is what you want from a big sort of lanky striker like him. You want him to put all the goals away, but you want him to sort of rough up the defenders. And it's like, when we see him up against Gabriel and stuff, and people say, oh, he's not matching that physicality as you might expect him to. But in a game like today, it shows that he clearly does have that about him, and he can clearly put himself about. And it's a great finish. It's a lovely goal all round, I think, because the ball over the top maybe isn't the greatest because he has to move Sepp van der Berg out the way. But the fact that he has the ability to do that in the first place and does it with such ease and then just latches onto the ball, and it's a great finish. I think all round it was a very enjoyable goal to watch, and I think that hopefully City will carry on this sort of playing over the top to him, playing to his strengths, because clearly it's working. If there is, like say, if there's space in behind, we might as well. And the fact that he was so frustrated even in the second half when Foden didn't play that ball, and when it's not repetitively done, it's like he knows clearly this team hasn't learnt that a ball over the top can result in me scoring, even after scoring it in the first half. The fact that he's so frustrated by that and clearly wants the team to continue to play to those strengths. Maybe he will, continue knocking on Pep's door saying, mate, you've got to tell your players to put the ball in behind because I'm there every time I'm there. And I think that if City carry on doing that, if we, because De Bruyne was so good at it, and obviously we've lost that sort of edge in the team now. But I think if we can get, I mean, even like Reinders when I know it's in the second half again and not to Haaland, but playing that ball in behind to Bob, I mean, there was like just playing through the lines to Bob was such a brilliant pass. And I think if we can do that more often just with Haaland, we're going to score so many goals. And I know that people complain about the fact that it's Haaland scoring. I mean, it's only Haaland, but that is at the end of the day what the big man is there to do on the pitch. And if it means City win, I'm not asked, to be honest.
Yeah, Joe Ricci, it's a hell of a finish as well. And I think my favourite Haaland finishes are quickly becoming those ones where it isn't, maybe this is a bit, selfish of me myself, but not the ones where loads of players are involved, the typical archetypal Guardiola goals where Haaland gets a finishing touch with a cutback. When you get to see him almost carve out half the opportunity, because it was a great ball from Guardiola, but there was still so much to do. When you get to see the full sort of mechanics of that beast unravel and shrug the defender off, take the touch, go the opposite side. I think of the one against Upamecano in the Bayern game in 2023. Where he shows that guile and he shows that athleticism and sort of flexibility. Those are my favourite Haaland goals because they just leave you sat there going, there is no one else on planet Earth who can do that, what he's doing.
Yeah, I mean, it really just highlights his full skill set, right? His speed, his strength, his ability to read. That ball from Guardiola was, I think it had good intent. I think, as we've all kind of said now, like it needed a lot from Haaland, and Haaland's ability to read it and kind of get around the defender and then make it his own. I almost feel like Haaland deserves like a goal and an assist for that.
Yeah.
But I thought it was interesting post-match. He made a quote basically, and I'm paraphrasing, but basically saying, I wasn't really feeling it this morning when I woke up, feeling the game that much, and then got into a bit of a physicality with the Brentford back line. It really fired me up and led on to the goal and led to some further physicality. And I think that's the type of game that, especially when he moved to England, Haaland was probably expecting a lot of, was that physical nature, and something that he certainly embraces, and it certainly gets you into the game. So yeah, I mean, it's one that I don't think anyone else, ironically, bar maybe Vardiol himself, can score in the City squad. And obviously it was the winner on the day. So more of that. I know there's not always pace or space in behind the back line, but when there's that opportunity, especially where we're playing a little bit more long ball with Donnarumma on the side, I think you have to just get it up there and know that you have a steady back line behind you, a steady goalkeeper that, like, okay, if you turn it over sometimes, that's fine, but it's worth the chances because more often than not, Holland's going to capitalize on it.
Yeah, totally. Tweet, anything else, guys, to add from that first half? Obviously, we'll touch on Rodri's injury in the second half towards the end, which was obviously a big part of it. And, fair play to Nico Gonzalez, thought he came on really well. Anything else before we go to the break? I'm getting silence.
I would just say, I was just going to say, I mean, I think we'll talk about it more in the second half, but just like that first half is the Oscar Bob that I want to see, and I think we all want to see more of. I'm not as thrilled, like probably the rest of us, with what we saw second half, but his ability to take on multiple players, whether to create a chance for himself or for others, I think and I'm starting to get into like Jack Grealish territory of like, when he has the overlapping player, I think he's so much better because it gives him, well, one, he's not going against 2 or 3 defenders, and he can either, I think he has a great through ball on him, or it gives him the chance to go in and take a couple players on. And he got that a bit with Reinders, not so much with Nunez today. I don't know if that was by instruction, but I think he's looking like first season Jeremy Doku, of needing kind of a kick up the ass to say like, hey, you have the ability, go on and do it, be confident in what you're doing. And Pep alluded to it in his post match, but that second half, kind of like the rest of the side, was just a little bit stale. And he's young, it's not surprising, but you see a first half like that, and it's like, okay, now go on and make that a regular thing.
Yeah, fair enough. That'll do for part 1. Join us after this quick break. Welcome back to the City Ramble 3-word review times. MCFC 91747. Rodri is fine. I wonder if that's Rodri's burner and he's just letting us know. Fair enough. Graham says, Haaland, you beauty. Can certainly get behind that. Robert says, stinky second half. Sydney says, bad without Haaland. Paul says, room for improvement. Keith says, done and dusted. Rocket Citizen say, oh no, Rodri. Guys, it's fine. Rodri himself has told us that he's okay. Morris has said points over performance, and Dan says big 3 points. Joe Olivier, we were all sat there at half time going, okay, we've seen this movie before. City play really well in that first half, and then suddenly, the halftime break comes along, second half comes along, and we look shaky, not as quickly as it turned around in this Brentford game, but Brighton was similar. Obviously Monaco, although I maintain that City did more than enough to win that game against Monaco, and they were actually good, if not at least fine. Being said though, we all saw it coming. Joe Olivier, why was no one able to combat it in that sense?
I mean, even the fact they didn't have a single shot on target in the first half, it was like, Christ,
it have a touch in City's box.
Yeah, like it's gonna happen. You just knew, and it didn't. And I don't really. I mean, maybe the Rodri injury played a part in it. I feared the worst when he went off. I thought that him going off, we'd have our heads drop, and we'd sort of realise, or we'd go, oh God, remember last season when we didn't have him, and we'd sort of revert back into that style of like worrying what would happen without him. And that sort of caused us to sort of throw away the game. And I can't really put it down to one thing. I think it's a City team that maybe is a little bit fatigued, a little bit knackered. I played a lot of football over the last, and to be fair, I know it's been a while since sort of the United, Napoli, Arsenal run, but for the players who never usually play, they say for the fact that we never play the same team for 3 games in a row for like 4 years, the fact that it even happened in the first place, it probably did affect the players more than we might expect it to.
And there's been, 4 first-team players out? Kovacic, Shirky, Ait Nouri, Marmoush. Don't think I'm missing anyone there. That's 500 minutes, possibly a little bit less, but you get the point. A
Yes.
few of them would have started these games. They'd have been in and out. They'd have been changing. It's been a lot. It has been taxing. It's not an excuse, but it has been taxing on these players. This little stint.
Yeah, exactly. And I think as well, obviously, you combine that with the fact that Brentford had realised that the game was still there. They weren't. City weren't out of sight, and if they stick it on us, they know that City could perchance crumble. That happened a lot last season when teams actually realise they can take it to City, and they might get something out of it, a lot more likely to. So I think sort of a combination of all of that meant that City just dropped off a little bit, and that's fine. You can't expect a team to, like you say, the intensity they showed in the first half was really impressive. It wasn't one that I was expecting sort of City to come out of the blocks with. And you can't expect a team to do that for the full 90 minutes. That's fair enough. That's just not the way that the human body works and the way that fitness works. I mean, I was surprised at some of the substitutions. That's what I'll say.
Okay.
Freshening up the team. I didn't mind the Bernardo one. I was a bit confused about the Oscar Bob one for Jeremy Doku. I thought maybe Savinho was the right call there. But even though I love Savinho, it's not because I dislike the guy. I just think that I wasn't too impressed with his showing today. I thought maybe Doku was the right call, and Bob, I know he dropped off in the second half, but I thought that first half performance maybe warranted him staying on the pitch.
Yeah, can I tell
maybe
you
he was
why?
knackered, but
Yeah, I was actually asking for both wingers to come off, but obviously
Yeah.
there might have been something with Reinders, and he's played a lot. I think he started every game,
Yeah.
bar the Huddersfield one. I didn't mind it at the time, Savinho going out to that right hand side. I didn't think Savinho played well by any means, and I actually thought he was very frustrating at times. But compared to the first half, Oscar Bob was anonymous in my opinion in that second half. Bar a little flirt with he went inside and out, and I can't remember if he created a chance, but he did something decent very early on. From that, nothing. I still felt like Savinho was a willing runner. And Joe Ricci, I know you're, hashtag #1 Oscar Bob fan, but what I want to see from Oscar Bob is, I think when the tide is going with City, sorry for this sort of metaphor, but when City is swimming with the tide, I think he's like fast, like phenomenal to watch. He's a gorgeous footballer when he's got the ball. What I want to see, and I've kind of seen it a couple of times now, I'd say the Spurs game, I'd say the Brighton game, and I'd say this one. When City are going against the tide a little bit, I want to see him sort of really swim against it and put up a fight a little bit more, get the ball sort of. And I don't know what that entails, whether or not I'm not saying, for example, it has to be he goes and gets a goal, he does it all and he scores and he sticks one's top bin. Not at all. But I kind of want to see him break it up a little bit more. I want to see him maybe stretching that defence. If it means coming a little bit closer to the ball, and then that would allow Erling Haaland, for example, to run in behind. I don't know what it is. When it's going well for City, I think he's great. But he, in my opinion, does have a tendency to go a little bit missing when it isn't necessarily flowing in that right direction.
Yeah, I mean, I don't obviously 100% agree, but I definitely don't disagree. I think he has a little bit of Rico Lewis about him where...
Yeah, that's a very fair comparison.
It's not like system player, but, we've said it about Rico. Of when things are going... when City are a cohesive unit playing well, he looks phenomenal. He is a product of the system, but not a system player. Whereas Oscar Bob, I think that's a fair comparison, although the difference that I'd say with Oscar, from what we've seen him do, granted in smaller sample sizes, different competitions, is when he's on it, I think he can take over a game. What surprised me and disappointed me as such a supporter of his is his connection with Haaland has been borderline non-existent. And I don't even mean because of the national team connection or anything like that, but it just feels like his play style would lead to such a good connection with Haaland, both between his ability to play passes in behind. I think he has that little dink chip across that Grealish could do from the left that, not that Haaland's the greatest header of the ball, but I think he has found him really well in the past. And it seems like that's been borderline non-existent this season. But again, I said it earlier, and Pep, to kind of quote that a little bit more, he said, I'll encourage him to be more incisive, and when he goes 1-on-1, 2-on-2, he can create really big situations. So it seems like there might be a little bit of either self-doubt on Oscar's end, or maybe fear of trying to do too much, losing the ball, and then, we know that that's something that Pep sometimes can encourage, but other times in the wrong scenario can really, hurt the side. So I think he's almost a little bit too pre-programmed and really just needs, like I said, kind of a kick up the ass to say, you have the ability, go on, take on two guys, and if you lose it, at some point you're going to have Kusanov behind you who can clean up any mess. You're going to have Ruben Diaz. You're going to have Rodri. So I think with time he's still going to show his quality. And again, I'll take all bias with that statement, but I just think he fits this side so well. It just needs to be, as you've alluded to, more than just 45 minutes at a time.
Yeah. Joe, Olivier, that second half, I'm going to sit here and say it wasn't a mess, because at times it certainly was, and it kind of felt like you were just waiting for I'm not going to name names because that's unfair, but you were just waiting for X player to do this or Y player to get a sloppy pass or whatever it is that we have seen in the past. I understand why some people look at that and go, we might have got away with one. I'm going to take a different approach. And maybe it's because I crashed out so hard last season and was calling everyone shit and I was saying burn the club down and, whatever. But at the same time, I just feel like it's at the point of recording, it's the 5th of October. We're 7 Premier League games in. I don't think, no. Well, we have played 10 matches across all competitions this season, which is kind of the point where at the start of the season, 10 matches in, let's see where we are. I think when you compare where City have come from, not where they've been, and what I mean by that is, look at where City were last season, where they started this season out, not what we expect from a Man City team, a Pep Guardiola team. Because if you're saying to me, is this performance acceptable in the prism of teams like 23, 24, 22, 23, or any of the 4 in a row, or Centurions, or 2018, 19, no, like flat out no, that would be considered the worst performance of the season, flat out. But I think when you look at where City were last season, and just this fixture in comparison in general, that City were 2-0 up, was it, last season again away to Brentford, and they end up drawing 2-2. Last season, be that personnel or be that mentality or whatever it is, City do not win that game on Sunday if you just sort of copy and paste it. But they did win the game this week. Donnarumma makes an amazing save. They defend to some degree to their lives, don't think their lives were under that much threat, but even still, they had a physical battle, the long throws. That was difficult to deal with. It was bitty, it was breaking up play. I'm really happy in almost equal measure with both halves for different reasons, because in the first half, I thought the football was great. In the second half, we saw a mentality shift from City and they went, right, okay, if we need to buckle down, we'll buckle down. The ball isn't sticking, it was scrappy, whatever. But the defenders and the goalkeeper, they got the job done.
I mean, yeah, absolutely spot on. I think if you told me at some point last season that after 10 games we'd be 3 points off the top of the table, and we'd be grinding out wins away at Brentford. If you were asking me after the Brentford draw, if you were telling me we'd be grinding out wins away at Brentford and winning games comfortably at home, I would have bit your hand off for it. I'd have said that's a quick turnaround, quick rebuild. So yeah, I think that City fans maybe need to be a bit more grateful about where we are now, and sort of say that we are in a pretty good position. And I've always sort of stood by the point where as long as we're there or thereabouts come Christmas, I'm fairly confident City can get the job done in terms of sort of challenging for a title and winning trophies. And I think that at the minute, if you just take where we were now and say you're 3 points off the top by Christmas, that's a bloody brilliant position to be in. So to be in this spot now, I'm more than happy for it. And I think that, I think City, like you said as well, I think City, there are both positives to take from City's performance in either half. I think that you have this half of being defensively sound, and even just as far as Arsenal, it's a contrast to that where we didn't concede the last minute goal. We all thought it was going to happen because they didn't have a shot on target for so long, because they didn't have a touch in the opposition box, etc., etc. You just felt like it was coming. And for once, that feeling was like, oh, well, maybe I shouldn't have had that, because we've got a goalkeeper who can and make big saves, defenders who can rise to the challenge, who relish it. You can have a striker who almost relishes the defensive work just as much as he does scoring.
Did you see that tweet someone said about Haaland, how he's on £500,000 a week, whatever it is, but he plays like he's broke? And I think that really perfectly sums up his mentality as a footballer, doesn't it?
Yeah, I mean, we were talking about on the Monaco review about his comments and about how you could view that as passion and fire and that disappointment at not seeing the game out, not scoring more, can be the fact that he just has this love for the club. He wants to be he's a born winner. And yeah, you can see that through the fact that the bloke plays with his, heart on the line, with his badge on the line every single game, whether that is, Brentford away or Arsenal away. He will be there at the back, heading corners away. He won't just be sort of sat up top waiting for the ball over the top. He will be doing the dirty work that a lot of other strikers maybe shy away from and maybe aren't as keen for. So I think that, yeah, there's a lot of positives you can take from both, from all the players, from some, even sort of like you say, the ones that you won't name, but the ones that you probably were expecting to make a little bit of a bozo moment. I thought they weren't that bad today. I thought they did the job, and that's kind of what they're there to do. I'm talking about Mateus Nunes. Do you know what I mean? I think you can say his name, but we were kind of expecting it when you saw the lineup, and when you were in that stage where City are trying to be defensively sound. You think if there's going to be a bozo moment, it's either going to come from maybe Nico Gonzalez because Rodri's come off, and I'm just going to point fingers at him again and say that he can't deputise with Rodri, or it's going to come from Mateus Nunes. Instead, it was neither of them. City saw the game out, and you can just sort of say, maybe we should reserve our judgments a bit more when it comes to them, because Mateus Nunes, he's not a natural right back, and he's there to do the job, and he can do the job. And today was a perfect example of that. He just fits in and does the job for City perfectly. So I think that all around, there's a lot of positive you can take, and I think you can read deep into the performance of we weren't maybe clinical enough, and we shouldn't be going to Brentford trying to scrap for a 1-0 win. But at the same time, I think that it's 3 points on the table, and you better than it was last season. And I think we should be maybe grateful for the quickish turnaround that we've had from sort of going there and being 2-0 up and drawing 2-2 in the 90-odd minute, and going there and not conceding a 90th minute goal, and seeing the game out in pretty good fashion.
Yeah. Joe Ricci, I mean, you've just sort of mentioned a little bit in the chat about this, and I did notice at the time. I meant to make a sort of a note of it, but didn't in the end. But it feels like this backline, collective noun, in terms of not just individual players, but whoever's playing in the defence, really enjoys defending, and that's. I don't want to get ahead of ourselves. I'm just talking literally here. That's a key to a title-winning team, isn't it? You've got to enjoy doing the dirty work just as much as you do the fancy stuff at the other end of the pitch.
Yeah, it feels like the best comparison that comes to mind was, and you'll remember it better than I will. Most of the year, was it 2021 versus PSG in the Champions League?
Yeah, Zinchenko and Diaz.
Yeah, where it just felt like every clearance, no matter how complex or simple, they were smacking each other on the chest, hyping each other up, and it's like today was, or Sunday, it's like, lads, it's Brentford. Like they they had some very simple clearances, or you could have rolled a pass to Donnarumma, he'd save it, and everybody would go up and embrace him. And I'm sure part of that is welcoming the new guy, but it does feel like, one, he feeds off that energy, but more importantly, two, I think Donnarumma's presence, his winning mentality, and obviously his experience, 10 senior years of football already, are kind of rubbing off on everybody around him, which, again, when you have a number 8/10 playing left back who's 19, 20 years old, you have a midfielder turned left winger turned right back, trying to hold down the flanks. I think you need that experience, and I think that trio of Vardiol, Ruben Dias and Donnarumma will quickly become one of the best. It's a weird thing to call a trio, but central part of a defense in all of Europe, and that hasn't gotten lost on me. Just things that we didn't typically see, and I'm not necessarily pointing it at Ederson in particular as a fault. I think it's just who Donnarumma is as a personality. He's not only a big person, but he's a big personality, a big voice, and I think City need that, because at times, in particular last year, it just felt lifeless. It felt disjointed. I think it really helps too. There's a lot to be said for, and this wasn't able to be the case because of injury last year, but keeping the same 3 or 4 players in the back line consistently.
Yeah.
You look at, most sides when they go on winning runs, it's because they can keep the same, lineup. I think City can afford a change in midfield,
look at Arsenal, for example, with Gabriel and Saliba.
Or Liverpool, right? I mean, if they can do Konate and Van Dijk, maybe not in 24, 25 or 25, 26, but in years past, that's when they're at their best.
Yeah, I don't, possibly they are up there with the best centre-backs in the world. I don't know individually where those two would necessarily rank per se, but I think you have that collective duo working together week in, week out. They know what to do, and that's been the case with City's best sort of teams. John Stones,
Right.
Ruben Diaz. What was it back in 2017-18? Otamendi and company, was it, for the most game? I can't even. Yeah, Stones perhaps. So maybe disproving the point there that it was chopping and changing, but at the same time, you do definitely need that. Joe Olivier, just quickly as we begin to wrap up, that is now off the top of my head. Man United win, Napoli win, Arsenal draw, Huddersfield win. Was that the Huddersfield one? Yeah. Now I'm getting nods. Burnley win, Monaco draw, and Brentford win. Rank the last 7 games out of 10 for me, please. Not individually, but as a whole.
God, you might have to repeat some of them fixtures at me. So United, that's 10 out of 10. Do you know what I mean?
No, not individually.
Not individually.
Just
right.
as this sort of
right,
basically
okay,
this
sorry.
stint, this from
Post
the September international break to the October.
So I just had to get in the fact that I love beating United out there.
Yeah,
if it wasn't made clear already.
Totally get behind that.
I'd probably say it's a good 8. I'd say is that
okay?
Feels like it's quite high, but
I think I'd go.
But I think that some of the performances we've seen across, even in the games where we have dropped points and drew, I think some of the performances have been really, really impressive. Specifically, like Arsenal, even though we did concede that last minute when I thought there was a lot of defensive sort of grit, determination to try and grind that result out. And we saw the benefit of that today against Brentford. Some of the football we played against Manchester United, some of the football we played, I suppose even against Arsenal, sort of the football we played, but in the different sense of that, while you are defensively sound, but hitting on the counter, something that we don't really see a lot from City. I quite enjoyed that style of football. I thought it was really good from City that we were able to sort of switch to that quite easily, even though it's not a game plan we employ too much or have employed too much in the past. So I think that sort of all around, there's been a lot of impressive performances. There's been a lot of individuals that have stepped up. Haaland obviously continues to bag like just something that is just unbelievable, something out of this world. Doku has stepped up. O'Reilly has really flourished in the sort of last 8 games. So I think sort of I'd say an 8 because you can't really get to, it's not a 10 out of 10. It's not perfect because I'd probably be winning every game 5-0 and keeping a load of clean sheets. But I think that bar the silly goals we concede and some of the misplaced sloppy passes that are still sort of in there, but you can sort of maybe nail that down to sort of players being still kind of new to the league, because I know Ryan has that a lot, and people sort of still catching up to speed regarding injuries and fitness and whatnot. But I think that overall it's been a very impressive sort of 7-8 games for City, and I think if we can continue this, it's been a great momentum builder, considering that we were coming off the back of 2 losses against Spurs and against Brighton, and I think that that was a really important win, sort of the game after that, sort of trying to change the spin of things, going from back-to-back losses to going to, right, let's get a winning run going and get, or at least an undefeated run going. And that's exactly what City have done. And I think that having this momentum behind City, it's a really important thing, and we can hopefully see that sort of carry on into the next sort of run of games where it does kind of become a little bit easier. I know it become a little bit harder. I suppose after Everton, we've got Bournemouth, Villa, they've sort of just about started becoming good. We've got Liverpool in there as well in the next sort of 4 or 5. So hopefully having this bit of momentum behind us means that going into these games, we're not looking over our shoulder going, God, we've just lost, or we've lost 2 out of the last 3. We've got to get a result here. We're on a really good run of form, and it's sort of going into the next few games. It's sort of like, right, let's just pick up where we left off and let's continue going.
Football seasons are slogs, and I think one of my pet peeves with modern football discourse in general is the desire and the clamour for the instant gratification, easy for me to say, in the sense that like everything at this point has to be perfect. If it isn't, it's a disaster. Just look at the way the Liverpool fans are speaking now and how Arsenal fans have acted in the past, like just the reactionariness of it. But Joe Ricci, I almost feel like this is I totally accept this is like galaxy brain take, but dropping the odd point here and there has kind of, in a way, made me more reassured, because I think if City had, won 7 out of 7, but maybe the performances didn't reflect that. I think City have been very good money for 5 wins, 2 draws. Certainly, going away to Arsenal. And I think you have to say at the same time, the fixture list has been kind to City in this spell, which is what we knew heading into it anyway. If we'd have gone into it and we'd have had, I don't know, 5 wins, 1 defeat, a draw, whatever. But I just feel like this has been such, in so many ways, morale boosting, a real sort of great look at where City are. We've seen some of the new players. Obviously, a couple of them have been injured still, but Reinders has really impressed me personally. I think he had so much that midfield. This stint, if City do anything successful come the end of this season, I think we'll look back on these 7 games as, well, yeah, the turning point.
Yeah, I think when you look at it from like a 10,000-foot view, it's, results wise, I give it like a 9 out of 10. Performance wise, probably a 6, 6.5, and that probably sounds a little harsh, but I think it's also justified when you say, look at all the chopping and changes through injury, right? It seemed like they had a back line nailed down. Kuznetsov goes down. Well, at one point you thought you had your left back lined up. Aït-Nouri goes down. That kind of X factor you thought you had in Cherki, he goes down. I mean, Rodri hasn't been 100% in my eyes since 2024. When you factor all that in, I think, I'd echo a lot of what you're saying in that just get, at this stage of the season, just get results. Look at the club's greatest ever season, 22-23. How'd that first half of the year go? It was abysmal. They looked at times completely lost, and they went on to win the treble. And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen this season, but I see this side in particular, with all of its youth, with all of the newcomers, and with all the ability, as a side that's really going to grow into the season. I don't feel that way about some of the teams that are in the top 5 at the moment. And I really, City winning the league this season wouldn't shock me in the slightest. But to your point earlier, it's a long season. At this point, you take the results, you build on it. You don't need perfection. Let's check back in around the busy fixture schedule in December, and we'll really see what this squad's made of. And ultimately, I have a lot of faith in them. I think there's still a lot of question marks, but you look at the talent that's in that side, and I'd take City's talent over anyone else in the league. So,
yeah. I agree, and I think at the start of the season I predicted City to win the league, and it was because of that. It wasn't that I thought City necessarily would run away with it. It's just you look across the league. Look, I'm going to say it right now on record. I think Arsenal can win the league in the next month. Basically, when you look at their fixture list and you look at how Liverpool are sort of what sort of trajectory they're on, I think Arsenal are the only team right now who have the ability, if they wanted to really get a firm grip. 10-point lead, something like that. For them, it's always been mentality. So it'll be, that's a totally different question altogether. But I think we've touched base on everything now, unless there's anything you guys want to quickly bring up, because it's another international break. So I won't, but you guys will go into hibernation for a week or 2. Anything else you want to add?
Oh boy, we're going to be called some happy clappers after some of the takes today. And I relish it. I love it. God forbid a man is confident in his football team to get results and win trophies. Call it spoilt brat, call it whatever you want, but I'm just a confident man, and I like Manchester City, and I think that, if you're a City fan, you want them to do well, all right? And after a win against Brentford, I'm not going to be picking apart the blooming, the small, tiny, I'm not going to be nitpicking at it. I'm going to be relishing in the fact that we've got 3 points. We're 3 points off the league leaders. We play Everton before Liverpool and Arsenal next play. We could be top, and when we are top...
bring it on.
When we are top, not if, that's going to come back to bite me, I'm sure. At least Grealish ain't playing, so he can't score the winner.
True,
when we are, I'll be sat there relishing the few hours we've got at the top of the table, when everybody was saying that we were never going to win the league after just 2 losses after losing to Brighton and Spurs. So bring it on, I say. Bring on the happy clapper chants.
I can tell you from experience. I can tell you from experience, it's a lot better to be called a happy clapper than a and I quote, plastic yank. So I'll take happy clapper any day.
Well, Joe Olivia, you were with us when we in the depth of that spell in last winter, but we had we had all sorts of abuse sort of flown into the City Ramble DMs of, you know, clickbaiting and doom mongering and all sorts. So to be fair, it's probably the best way to be. If the happy clappers call you a doom monger and the doom mongers call you a happy clapper, then must be doing something right. Which listeners and our esteemed audience, because none of you would ever say anything like that to us, make sure to be liking, subscribing wherever you get your podcasts or you're watching along on. Until next time, it's been a pleasure and we will see you later.